So today, my guest is Saira Hasan, who is a cognitive behavioural hypnotherapist. Saira specialises in supporting women to overcome anxiety and self-esteem issues, as well as women with trauma, grief, weight loss, preparing for childbirth, overcoming fears and phobias, as well as other life challenges that we experience. Saira also holds a diploma in stress management and resilience and facilitates workshops for schools and organisations. Before training as a hypnotherapist, Saira spent most of her adult life as a teacher in different countries, including a decade of teaching psychology, amongst other subjects, in international schools in Dubai. Saira is also a mother of 3. She has travelled the world, and it's her mission to empower women to live better and more fulfilled lives. Welcome to the show, Saira.
Thank you for having me, Tuğçe. Thank you.
Thank you. It's wonderful to have you today, and I cannot wait for our conversation.
Me too.
So before we get stuck in and talk about the wonderful work that you do, I'd just love to hear a bit about your background, and maybe if you could share with our listeners and our viewers what it was like for you growing up in Pakistan, for you and your sisters.
Yeah, so we were 3 sisters. I was born in 1964, so I'm giving away my age, but that's fine. So just to let you know the time, the 60s were a cool time to grow up, I think, early 70s. In Pakistan especially, because after that in 77 we had a coup and martial law, and things became much more stricter and so on politically as well, and that had a knock-on effect on other aspects of the country's life. So and I belong to a very big extended family, so had loads of cousins that lived next door, and so they shaped a lot of my childhood. And as they say, it takes a village to raise a child. So, we were raised with aunts and uncles and cousins and grandfather especially. And it was a lot of fun. It really was a lot of fun growing up. They were strict. They were quite conservative. So my dad's family was part of it. Part of the family was in India,
Right.
and my dad had migrated to Pakistan after it was made, a few years later. So so I missed growing up with some of my cousins back in India, but then I met them later, and they were wonderful. And part of my dad's family was in Lahore as well. So it was really nice growing up with so many cousins from both sides of the family. And they were very conservative, especially my mom's family. My mom used to wear the burqa when she had to go to college, etc. My grandmother was schooled at home, because at that time, in the late 20s, I guess, Muslim women were educated at home.
Right.
But my mom's generation, they went to school, they went to college. My mom went on to do her B.Ed and trained as a teacher. So I think my life and my mom's life were pretty similar in that way, education-wise. But my grandfather was very conservative. So my mom and her 6 sisters, they used to wear a burqa when they had to go out, till they got married. And, in the 60s, there was another paradigm shift where women stopped wearing, a lot of women, younger women, stopped wearing the burqa and went out and worked and so on.
Right.
So that was the kind of atmosphere, Amelia, that I grew up in. So they were quite strict with us as well. Were we empowered? Because we had so many restrictions that our dad used to drive us to school and college, and even if we had to go shopping, etc. But then there was so much space. There were about 7 houses next to each other. So we were never bored, because we were skipping from one place to another and another. But when I thought about that, the first thing, I think we were empowered. And I discovered that later in life, because my parents gave us very clear boundaries.
Right.
And when I grew up later on, I valued that, because we knew where we stood with them. And they developed a really, evolved sense of integrity in us. And also gave us a sense that things don't define you, material things don't define you. So growing up, it was basically education. That's all you need to make your way in life. My dad made a lot of effort taking us across town to a convent in the other part of town. It took us, we were always late. It took him about half an hour to start the car, especially in the winters. Although there was a school down the road, but he made that effort because they thought schooling was worth it. Same with the college. So they gave us a very good academic base, and a really clear set of boundaries, which I think helped us later in life. Yeah. And that did empower us because we had a quiet inner confidence. Yeah. So we were married young, all of us, after doing our bachelor's. The three of us, I'm the eldest, all of us got married after doing our bachelor's in our early 20s. But all of us studied later. So I went on to do my master's, and then, all this hypnotherapy training. All of us, had that growth mindset, yeah, which I feel is very empowering.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
That's amazing that you said that for your family or for your father, it might have been quite a conservative upbringing. However, education was really important. Yeah. Your mother having also got she was a teacher, she did a BEd, didn't she?
And especially my mother, she was quite ill when she was growing up, and for 2 years of her young life, she couldn't even walk because she had a rheumatic heart. Okay. And her parents didn't want her to continue her schooling because they were so scared for her. But she went back to school. Her mother had never gone to school or college. She didn't have a precedent, but she went to another school because she said her classmates had gone to other classes, maybe senior classes, so she didn't want that for herself. She went to a better school. She learned English. Then she went to college. And from there, then she trained to be a teacher. So she did her bachelor's in English literature, and then did a further bachelor's in education, and taught. And she used to teach Persian literature, English literature, and Urdu literature.
Amazing. So, and that's incredible, having had this illness, isn't it? It kind of shows you a lot about the mindset of your mother. With this,
absolutely, she never let on. She was. We always were scared that she, one day she'll need her open heart surgery, and she did. But by that time, I was in my late 30s when she needed her open heart surgery. But growing up, she didn't make us feel uncomfortable or even, let that interfere with her daily life or her zest for life. So she was an incredible woman.
Fantastic. Yeah, sounds like it. Sounds like she's a really incredible woman. And, when we learn from a young age and we see this from family members, and we have these values instilled in us and what's important to us, and these beliefs, that helps us for us to be empowered. It's something I talk a lot with my clients as well, this empowerment. And you have those boundaries.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that sets us up.
Your own integrity.
Yeah.
Face the world wherever you are.
Absolutely.
So very empowering. As far as we took it for granted when we were younger, but now that I think about it, because people have superiority complexes, they have inferiority complexes, and it all boils down to there is a certain lack, or they feel sadly that there is a lack inside. They might not be aware of it, but it's there, and they try to make up for it with material things or sometimes addictions, stresses, anxieties, and so on. So that's a beautiful gift that a parent can give a child.
Yeah. That feeling of wholeness, and that's exactly. So it sounds like you had this amazing upbringing, extended family. So you had support, a really strong support network around as well. So it's was going to university and studying psychology always part of your plan moving forward?
I was always intrigued by human beings, and I thrived in college because for the first time we could choose our subjects. For some reason, I took a double major, French literature in Pakistan, which never gave me anything back. I don't know why I made my life that difficult, and applied psychology. But applied psychology I really enjoyed. Then I went into teaching, and on and off I taught most of my life. Just staying at home when my children were young, and I moved around and so on. So life happened, but always going back to teaching, and I probably would have been still doing it had we not moved to London. Um, so, so life happened, and I was taken out of my comfort zone once again. And I was teaching IB psychology in Dubai. Um, and when we moved to London, there were not many IB schools.
And when you say
First
IB,
of all,
sorry to interrupt.
International Baccalaureate. Yes, it's
Okay,
international. Yes,
which is different to
it's
the system here, isn't it?
different system. It's A levels. Most schools are A levels, and I'm a trained international baccalaureate teacher. I'm still an examiner, but so not many IB schools, and especially in Hertfordshire where I moved, there were none. Most of them, I think, are in the south. And for the first time in my life, I had just I was an empty nester. So what do I do? And suddenly this ad pops up on Facebook. And normally these ads are irritating, right? And you just try to ignore them and move on and scroll down. But something, I don't know, it was just intuition. I stopped, and I immediately, it didn't even take me a second. I said, this is what I need to do. It just jumped out at me.
And what was that ad for?
College of Hypnosis and Hypnotherapy. So they were offering a diploma course for CBT integrated with clinical hypnosis. So that was something that was really interesting because CBT is quite ubiquitous now, but teaming it up with clinical hypnosis was something that intrigued me. Because whilst I was teaching IB, I was teaching, grade the sixth form. What is the sixth form in A levels? And during lunch breaks, a lot of students used to come to me with their problems. And I felt because they thought I was a psychology teacher, maybe they felt that they trusted me or felt safe with me. So every lunchtime, I was hosting somebody or the other. And then I was obviously not trained to help them formally. So I sent them to my colleague downstairs, who was the counselor. And sometimes I used to wonder, why didn't I go into counseling? But since I enjoyed teaching a lot, that was just, at the back of my mind. So as now I know that the subconscious mind is so powerful. So I think when that ad jumped out at me, it was the divine's way of pushing me in the right direction, so to say.
Yes. Sometimes it has its way, the universe or the divine has its way of showing up for no reason. And actually the fact that we're looking out for the possibilities and the opportunities, and we know when to take them.
Because as a teacher, you're never off. It is so much marking and planning and execution and waking up in the early hours, getting the kids ready, getting yourself ready. So had that kind of a life, and then suddenly it's taken away from you. You feel a sense of loss, but once you get used to, waking up late and the slower pace in life, I didn't want to give that up either. So this was a good opportunity to be self-employed and also do something that I really love as much as teaching.
Yeah, right. So that took you from being in a place of employment to that suddenly quite a big step in that. Oh, it's being self-employed and having worked in the corporate field for 18 plus 20 years. So in advertising, and then that making that step for me of now I'm going to be self-employed. That's quite a big step, isn't it? So how was that for you in terms of the shift, both mentally, that fear that sometimes pops up, or the inner
Yes.
critic that starts kind of saying, you can't do this, or my, you know, I call it my inner gremlin. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes my inner gremlin likes to tell me that I'm not going to be able to do that. So how did you navigate that change?
Um, Fear as far as jumping into this course, the diploma course for hypnosis and hypnotherapy, the CBH one, we call it CBH, Cognitive Behavioural Hypnotherapy, then doing another one for stress management and resilience, and then doing a lot of other courses, especially the EMDR one and so on. So I kept on taking more courses, and so I'm quite addicted to those. Anyway, fear, you know, what's the most difficult part even now for me is asking for money,
Mm.
because I was always paid at the end of the day. It went to my bank account and that was it. And growing up in our household especially, asking for money, talking about money, etc., was considered quite vulgar.
Yeah.
So that's the hardest part for me. My inner voice cringes, literally my inner self cringes when I have to state that this is my fee, or, you know, when people start haggling or something, it just makes me very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So that's something that's an obstacle for me,
Mm.
as far as self-employment is concerned.
There is a thing around money and how we reframe and rethink about how we look at money. And again, like you, I was the same. My upbringing, I'm Turkish, my background is like, I guess it's whatever culture you're from. We all have that. Oh, it's not good to talk about money. You don't ask for
Exactly.
money. You don't, you
Yeah.
know, money doesn't grow on trees. There's all these words that we hear and
Yeah.
phrases. Money is the root
Yeah.
of all evil. Why is money so bad? But we need money. So
Yeah.
I hear you when you say that about the, you know, changing our relationship with money and how it's quite a
Absolutely.
difficult conversation sometimes, isn't it? Well, we
Yeah.
find it difficult. So then you were doing your courses, and did that help you? Did you to feel more, I guess, empowered?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because, you know, this is such a field. The
Mm.
more you know, the less you know. Because what I felt was, what if, let's say, I peel off the layers and a client shows me a side or a facet of their problem that I can't help them with? What do I do then? So I need to do this, this, and the other. So I should, you know, cover all their bases.
Mm.
So that's what I've tried to do. I love learning. It's just in my blood. Because my dad also, he was translating historical documents about 2 years ago. Um, so, so I do belong to that kind of a background, and I just love learning and applying it. Actually,
Mm.
have that kind of a you know, thirst for new ideas, new ways of thinking, new ways of perceiving things. And this is such a fascinating subject.
Yeah.
So because hypnotherapy and CBT and EMDR, they help with traumas, they help with anxiety, stresses.
Mm.
You know, social anxiety is so rampant, especially in the younger lot.
Yeah.
So you name it, even if somebody comes for weight loss, you peel off the layer and why are they, you know, emotional eating, or why are they stress eating? What is that? What is, so I try to figure out the root of the problem. And most of the time, for example, for me, um, suddenly CBT was not enough, because CBT focuses on what is maintaining the problem now. And that's one way of looking at it, and I get that. But when I started seeing clients, I felt that you just cannot ignore childhood memories.
Mm.
A lot of our inner critic, as you said, our inner voice, our perceptions, our frame of things, it's rooted in our childhood.
Yeah.
So I felt that it was an important aspect that I needed to consider or needed to know more about,
Yeah.
and offer in my therapy. So I do a lot of that as well.
Yeah. I'm
Building
going to go
confidence.
back to the CBH. It's funny because we call
Yeah.
it coaching, we call it CBC, which is coaching, cognitive behavioral coaching. There's obviously cognitive
Oh,
behavioral hypnotherapy, rather than the cognitive behavioural therapy. So just, you mentioned childhood, and how, in terms of our childhood and what we learn in childhood, just from your expertise or your background, between the ages of 0 to 7, are we most susceptible to our environment?
Absolutely. Because how do we, when we become conscious that this is us, our first memories, we are trying to take cues from our environment as to who we are, right? And the cues that we are getting is going to mold our selfhood for the rest of our lives, mostly. Because we might cover it with a veneer of sophistication, of adulthood, but for most of us, we're still that child. Now, who is that child? Like, parents can do a lot, but there's so many other influences. Their school, their teachers, their classmates, friends, extended family, and so on. So there's so many influences.
I guess our
On a
culture,
young
the media.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Television and now social media. I mean, where does it stop, and how do you grow up into a whole person with all those influences that you can't control, giving you your selfhood, shaping who you are, shaping your inner self.
Yeah.
So
it reminds me of I think it's a Jesuits quote, and and this goes back a long way. I think the quote is, and I'm probably going to get it wrong, so sorry if I do. Give me a child until the age of 7, and then I'll give you a man. And it almost sounds to me like, and it's crazy that this belief has been going on for such a long, this has been known for such a long time, and it's only something that's quite new to me recently, is wow, that period of life, 0 to 7.
absolutely.
And actually then a lot of everything, what we know, is formed by that age.
Yeah. Your position in the family also, I think that's very important as well. Where are you in the sibling hierarchy? I don't know about you, but I'm the eldest, and that has shaped me. And we always laugh about it. The middle child is a certain way, and the youngest is a certain way. In a lot of cultures, a boy is given more importance than a girl. So, what gender are you? Again, socioeconomic status, and so on. So many things going on.
So many.
It's a miracle that that most of us seem normal.
I was going to ask you, with it during this time of change, and we're seeing a lot of people having a lot of challenges and experiencing quite challenging times. Are you, or have you seen new clients coming with different with anxieties or with any challenges that are quite unique to this time?
My existing clients, their priorities change. So let's say we were addressing problem A, and suddenly they wanted to talk about the stresses of COVID and how they felt nervous about grocery shopping or even going out, or having panic attacks because they were going out and so on, were worried about their parents. So I worried about jobs, people were being furloughed and so on. So a lot of stresses, anxieties. And on the other hand, people are trying to save a lot as well. So private therapy is something of a luxury right now. So there are two things going. If people really need therapy, and probably will moving forward, but also because of the economic situation, they really can't afford therapy, at least private therapy. So a very difficult situation all around. I feel. I don't know what about you, but that's my take on it.
Yes, I think was definitely the stress and the anxiety and the overwhelm. I'm seeing there's a lot of overwhelm at the moment, trying to understand emotions. But I think
because there's so many unknowns,
mm,
and as Gary Zukov says, that they're two very basic emotions.
yeah.
When you boil them down, they're two basic emotions. It's love and fear. And when it's fear of the unknown,
Yeah.
because we haven't had this kind of global pandemic, at least in 2 or 3 generations. So it's a stressful time. It's a time where you don't know when this will go away, if it will go away, who will survive, who will not, whose job will survive.
Mm,
Um, this I was reading a New York Times article yesterday, and um, they said there were so many things, little things that you took for granted, and you won't be able to do that anymore.
mm.
Hug people, handshake, the play area in McDonald's where the children used to jump into balls,
Yeah.
or even getting,
Right.
trying on lipsticks on makeup counters. Something I really like to do, and my daughter used to freak out. Don't use the testers, and I was like, you too, you overthink things, and she was right.
Yeah.
So little things like that, we won't be able to do that again,
Mm.
uh, or at least we'll be scared to.
Yes, or at least we'll be thinking before we do something. We'll be checking in. That awareness is now there. We are
Right.
that sense of awareness. Like, okay, so is this the right thing for me to do or not?
Yeah. I would say it is the best of times, it is the worst of times. Best in the sense that human beings are very resilient and very inventive. So a lot of things that would not have been invented, or we would not have thought about doing them, we're doing them now.
Yeah, create. A lot of
Like,
people being very creative in this
very
time.
creative. Personally, I did a corporate workshop in Toronto, where my daughter works.
Mm.
And a couple of people came up to me and they said, "You're going back to London, but do you work online? Because we want to sign up." And I said, "No, like that. This is last November, like not many months ago." And I said,
Mm.
"No, I don't." And when when this COVID thing started and the lockdown happened, we had to, because we were in the middle of therapy, etc. We just couldn't leave our clients in the, abandon them. So
Yeah.
automatically, you just had to do it. And now it's the new norm. I don't think I'll even go back or
Yeah.
prefer going. This is so convenient, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been using Zoom. I when I've been doing my coaching, a lot of my coaching was actually done via Zoom before. So, and
Okay,
I've always I prefer it in some sense because, like you say, it's so convenient. You can do it at any time. You don't have to put 2 hours of travel time into London or whatever it is. And
right.
you know,
The travel time, the money you spend on petrol, and so on. And I was thinking, um, for the next generation, one good thing that has come up, I think, for women, I might be wrong, but that's how I look at it. For a lot of us women, we gave up our careers for our children, right? We took that step back because when a child is small, it needs its mother, and till they go to school, a lot of women leave their careers, or freeze their careers, and when they go back, they have to start from the beginning, or the male colleagues have gone up and into senior positions and so on, unless they have a really good support system, or in the previous generations they had nuclear families back home, so the grandmother would take care of the kid if a woman really wanted to work. But she was always conflicted. What if my child gets sick, and so on. So you've been a career woman, so have I. But now, with the flexibility of working from home, now that employers are realizing that they can get the same amount or even more work out of their employees if they work from home,
yeah,
I think, I mean, obviously it is going to be tough,
yeah,
but I think then women can have it all. Have the family, have the kids, have the career, with even probably their husbands are working from home, so have that kind of balance
yes,
at home, at work, that we couldn't think of till now.
And it's having it guilt-free. I think for me, how it's changed now to where it was a few years ago, because I was an executive director in a global planning agency, media planning agency. I think I was running, at the time when I had my first child, I was running Sony Consumer Electronics, and I had a team of 12 people. And then I was, second time around, as a team of 25 with Hewlett Packard.
Wow.
And I went back, my second time around, I went back 4 days a week with 1 day from home. But at that time, it was that 1 day from home, it was almost like I would over show up in that. I would be back to back, and you have to prove that you are capable of working from home, that you are efficient at home, because there was a stigma of, oh, you're working from home, in inverted commas, where I had a lot of, don't want to be genderizing here or being sexist, but my male colleagues would often say to me, oh yeah, I'm working from home today, so I'm going to go and do this and this. I was like, stop putting a bad name onto working from home. It's people like you who give us a bad name. Because for me, it was about, I can do the drop off at nursery, I can come back, I can put on a wash, I can, it was like, how much can I maximize my day, and then pick up my child maybe an hour and a half early, and then maybe have a little bit of extra time with them. So now it's interesting how a lot of companies, and I'm seeing a lot of this in companies where they didn't really believe in working from home, and they didn't really trust their employees to be productive or efficient working from home. They've been forced to see this and experience it. And you see them having trust now in there. So again, it's that empowerment,
a huge paradigm shift. Absolutely.
How much are we able to now? We've got that choice of, do you know what? I have a choice now. I can work from home. I can go into London, put my face mask on. I'm being respectful to people around me by putting my face mask on. I know in a lot of Eastern countries, in China, that the face mask is something that they're proud of. I'm protecting others. It's not about protecting ourselves. It's protecting and being respectful towards others.
Absolutely.
So, you can go to London or you can work from home. So it's in a way, it's great to see that sort of positive shift in how we work in society. So it'll be really exciting to see the change. Just to bring us back to your hypnotherapy practice, and all the different tools that you have in your toolkit. You mentioned, as well as the cognitive behavioral hypnotherapy, you wanted to build more on that, and you've introduced EMDR. Can you tell us a bit more about EMDR, what it is, and how you use it?
EMDR is quite a mouthful. It's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And it was developed by Francine Shapiro in the late 1980s. And especially, initially it was designed for PTSD and trauma. And that's its basic function. But now, because it's relatively new, and they're doing studies on it, and they're finding additional reasons to use EMDR. For example, it works really well with unresolved grief, public speaking, social anxiety, self-esteem issues, panic disorders, and so on. So it's being phobias as well. So initially that's how it got its name. So what you do is you move your fingers in front of a client's eyes, and they're not supposed to move their head, and they're just supposed to follow your two fingers as you go through a certain routine and ask them about their trauma and so on. The premise behind it is that there's some kind of bilateral stimulation of the brain and connection of the two hemispheres. And so you can do it either with the eye movement, or you can tap, just ask the client to do this, and you touch their the back of their hands, or you can do it with auditory stimuli. So I can't really do it, but so it has to be bilateral. Absolutely.
Okay. The bilateral side, and then the clicking.
Yeah. And the premise is that there are some memories, for example, with trauma, most of our memories are processed, and just they lose their emotionality, they're dissolved within our memory system, and we move forward in life. But with trauma, um, those memories are sort of frozen, and they're not assimilated, and they are there's so much emotionality and so much it's just frozen in time with all of its attendant the context, etc. Sometimes the horror of it, that it's affecting your now. And it's just frozen like a tumor. So what EMDR or bilateral stimulation does is it sort of dissolves that memory after you've done all the work, etc. It dissolves the memory. It's not like you're getting amnesia or you forget about it, but it loses its emotionality. So it's just another memory, and it's processed basically into your system, and you can move forward. It's very traumatic at the time. So, whichever therapy we use, for you might be coaching, etc. For others, it might be something else. But you need to stabilize the client. And once they're stabilized, only then can you introduce EMDR after a lot of psychoeducation as to what it is, what it entails, and so on. So that's how it works. With people who have, people who wear contact lenses or who have some kind of eye problems, then you just, I find when I was seeing clients face to face, I always loved the kinesthetic aspect, because then they could close their eyes and really go back and visualize and so on. And now I was wondering how to take that online, but and then I did some research, and it's so very easy. So what you do is you make your client, intertwine your thumbs like this. So basically, your two hemispheres, you're connecting them. And so does the therapist. And you tap, 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 and then you activate the target situation, and you ask them to picture the target situation, what it entails. You discuss this beforehand, before the stimulation begins. You ask them to tell you what happened in the target situation, have a picture in mind, all the emotion and the context that goes with that kind of trauma. What is the negative belief that they took away from that trauma? What is the positive belief that they're working towards, and how much they believe that they can? For example, let's say something happened in a person's childhood, there's this trauma, and the negative belief that they take away from it is, I'm worthless. And the reason why we're doing this treatment is to give them their self-worth back. So their positive belief would be, I'm worthy, right? So how much do you believe in the statement, I am worthy, from 1 to 7? So we take a rating, the distress rating, the belief rating, how much do they believe in the positive, and then work on that. And it might take several sessions, and a lot of emotions come up. So we might bring the distress scale down to a 0, from a 10 to a 0 in one session, for it to go back when they've gone home, and they've, because the process is, once you start the process, it keeps on going. So we ask them to take notes in a journal, etc. Tell us what's going on during the week, etc. Somebody might have nightmares. Somebody might get severe headaches. So it's quite difficult. It might be. For some people it is, for some it's not. We try to make them as comfortable as possible. But catharsis is not a bad thing. And once you're over that hump, sometimes, deep-seated trauma goes away in 2 sessions, 2 EMDR sessions.
Right.
So it's very...
So it can typically take more than 2 sessions to 6 sessions. Would that be?
Yeah. And then you take care, when you've taken care of the negative belief, you've embedded the positive belief, and then you ask them to do a body scan and see if there's any residual tension. When they think of that trauma, does it hurt in the body? And then you resolve that as well. So there's several things that you're doing with EMDR, and it's really powerful and
That
something
sounds
quite exciting.
amazing. Yeah, it sounds really. And just for listeners and viewers, I just wanted to explain that this isn't, when you were doing the tapping, it's not. This is different to EFT. It's different to the tapping work. This is EMDR. So this is
Yes.
different to that, and it's,
It's
you know,
one aspect of it. Tapping is one aspect of it that you can choose, but obviously you can choose whatever your client feels comfortable with, honestly.
So again, you're removing, you're shifting that energy and that old trauma, I guess people have.
It could be recent trauma, and for that there's a different protocol. I don't want to go into the minutiae of it, but let's say for an old trauma, it would be one memory. We call it a node in EMDR. So it would be one node, so one image related to all the emotions and the pain and what was happening at that time, etc., all the details. But with a recent trauma, we do it one node at a time. So we have it's even more involved, and it would take more time, strangely.
Okay.
Recent trauma, you have to deactivate several nodes,
Right.
from sense of smell to other, modalities and so on. So it's really interesting.
So you're engaging all different senses and modalities and making a connection
Yes.
with those. I guess it's taking on from the CBT work, which is about, I guess it's how we react to our reaction to a situation. It's our interpretation of the reaction, isn't it? It's how we interpret that.
In CBT, you have something called exposure therapy, right? And it works on the same premise. In CBT, why CBT plus hypnotherapy is so powerful on its own, even, is, let's say you have a client who's scared of crowds, or scared of public speaking, or scared, or some kind of phobia, or there's some kind of like fear of driving, or some kind of fear, etc., that they can't face and they're avoiding. So what you do is you're giving them a safe space, and in CBT you give them exposure therapy. So you expose the situation again and again so they're exposed to it in their imagination, and you would do it again and again and again till they become so used to it that it's not a problem anymore. And because they've done it virtually in their imagination so many times, the next time they face that situation in real life, it wouldn't be a problem. So EMDR works in a similar fashion. Now, what hypnotherapy does, hypnosis, what it does is you're doing exposure therapy, but you're doing it at a deeper level with hypnosis. So it's embedded, the changes are embedded in your subconscious mind at a deeper level. So it's really interesting how you integrate. That's what I like to do. I integrate several, I'll take something from EMDR, and I'll take something from CBT. And because some clients love CBT, especially the accountants. So if they come to me, they like the structure, they like the forms, they like the homework.
Yes.
And there's some clients who just don't gel with that. They hate it. They say, just enough of the, that regimented part of the form fillings and so on. I relax so well with just hypnosis. And what I do is I empower the clients. So we sit together and we make the treatment plan together. So I'll tell them that this is what I have in mind, but I'd be happy to take, what's your take on it? What would you be comfortable with? And they'll let me know. And even before, let's say we have planned something earlier, and I will still ask them a day before, I've planned this, but would you like to do something else? Or would you like to discuss something else? Because they're human beings. Something might have happened during the week. And I'm flexible enough, so they let me know, and then I'll change the plan, or more of hypnotherapy. Or for one client, initially hypnotherapy were giving them headaches because there's a lot of work going on in the subconscious mind. So we just put that on the side, just concentrated on CBT for several sessions, and gently brought her back to hypnotherapy. initially with gentle hypnosis, then deeper hypnosis, and so on, and then EMDR.
So the hypnosis is what really embeds what they've
It
been
does.
learning. I guess it's embedding it into their
It's
subconscious.
embedding it, exactly.
Well,
Like, because my tagline is that you might have had a lot of meetings in your life, but how many times have you had a meeting with your subconscious mind? We don't even know what's going on there. Most of the time, we're not aware of why we are acting the way we are acting.
Oh, absolutely. What did I read? Is it 95% of the time that we are operating on a subconscious mind? I don't know if that number is true, but
yeah, similar.
Yeah. I mean, that's extraordinary, isn't it? Such a high number.
Exactly. And if we can reach that level with a bit of relaxation, a lot of people say, but I could hear you. And my thoughts were jumping from one place to another. And I said, yeah, it doesn't matter because they are being embedded. Some clients go to sleep, they're literally snoring. And that's okay too, because it's going there. It's making the change.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter.
But I love really. That you say that you work with your client, you're in partnership with them. So you're creating something that works for them. You know, we're all human beings, you said. We're all individuals. We all have different ways of doing
exactly.
things.
So you have to adjust to their personality. And the beauty of hypnotherapy is, and we embed it in our scripts as well, that you will take what suits you and you will reject what doesn't suit you. So people have a lot of misconceptions about hypnosis because of stage hypnosis and because of, comedies, etc., that she'll make me do something that I don't want to, I can get stuck in hypnosis or something like that. When the opposite is true, it's very empowering because you are, it's a collaborative process. And you're embedding the suggestion that they're going to take what suits them, what they're comfortable with, and give back what they're not comfortable with. So at all times, they are in control. And that's the message that I want to bring to people, that it's a very safe way of delving into your subconscious and making change in the way you think, in the way you behave, in your actions, in your emotions, at a deeper level.
Yeah, it's like you're always at choice here. We're always at choice, and included in
hypnotherapy,
it's all the person, the client taking that choice if you want to take it or reject it, however you're going to embed it.
Absolutely.
So, who was Jose Silva, and what is the Silva method?
Okay, so the Silva method, I got to know about it last year because Jose Silva was somebody who was born in Texas in 1914. And he has a fascinating story. Like, he belonged to a poor family, so he had to work from a very, very young age. He didn't even go to school because he had to support his family. I think his father died when he was very young. And his younger brothers and sisters actually taught him how to read and write. And then somehow, because he was smart, he got into electronics, radio repair or something. And due to some kind of mentor who taught him how to do it, or some kind of coincidence. And then he had he got married, had lots of children, and then he started noticing, his children were not doing well in school. So he taught himself hypnosis and started to work on his children. And then he got more, insights into how the mind works. So he got his children's IQs up. He got their memories up. And once he was asking questions and his daughter was answering him. And then his daughter, what she did was something very strange. Whatever he was going to ask her about, she said it first. So it was a kind of telepathy, and then he developed the intuitive side of the Silva method.
Wow.
And then when Jose Silva died, he used to train instructors in his method, and he wrote a book as well. But when he died, it sort of died down because sometimes that happens when an individual is driving something. And now it's being taken up by the instructors and it's being repackaged and as the Silva mind control system and so on. And a lot of people that you've seen who are successful, like I think, I'm not sure, but Rhonda Byrne, who even wrote The Secret, I think, I need to double check it. I think she also had done the Silva method at one time. And a lot of people who, Norman Vincent Peale, who was a big, who had a big influence on people in the 60s with his self-help books, etc. So a lot of people imbibed the Silva method, but it just became old-fashioned and went out of.
What's the name of the founder of Mind Valley? Do you know Vishnan?
Yeah, Vishen Lakhiani. He's repackaged it because he said he turned his life around. Yes. So he's repackaged it, and he has. He's, I think, giving courses now on the Silva.
Very successful, hasn't he? With whatever, with Mind Valley.
Luckily, I bought it before it became that expensive.
I hadn't checked the cost on it. Is it really expensive now? Yeah. But that's really interesting. So it's interesting they call it mind control, but it's a really powerful tool to be.
It is very powerful. It takes time. It trains you, first of all, to go into alpha levels and how you do that, and it gives you exercises as you go along. So what I do is, basically, I did it for myself initially, but there are some exercises that I can, for example, if I see that a client is struggling with something, immediately, I'll go to the back of my mind and I say, okay, we'll use the Silva method here. And immediately, if it's a very imaginative client, they'll immediately respond and take something out of it in just 5 minutes. Wow. And so I'll give you an example.
Absolutely, that sounds good.
So if a client is struggling with a problem and we're not getting to the bottom of it with normal strategies that we use for problem solving in CBT, which is accept the things that you can't control and try to problem solve, try to find a solution with the things that you can control. So a client was struggling with some issue that they were having. So there's one exercise in the Silva method where you imagine there's a screen, 6 inches in front of you. So what you do is you project your problem and all that it entails on that screen, and you detach yourself and you're watching all your problems on that screen. And one way of going to the alpha level very fast is to raise your eyes a bit. So if you raise your eyes, in hypnosis, we also use that. The best way that it works really well and very quickly is if I ask you to close your eyes and try looking at the center of your forehead. So that raises your eyes without, the eye roll, basically. That will take you to the alpha level really fast. So you project your problem on the screen, all aspects of it, and look at it from a detached point of view. And then we ask them to move their screen 15 degrees to the left, because the left is the future. In Silva, left is the future, right is the past. Okay. So 15 degrees to the left. And on this second screen, you project the solutions. What can you do to solve this problem? And you'll be surprised, Tuğçe, how fast that works.
Wow.
And because I'm asking the client, and nod your head when you've got a solution, and then second screen dissolves, the third screen 15 degrees to the left further, keeping your eyes at a 20 degrees eye roll up. And now, what is your ideal self doing? What is your goal? How are you seeing your goal? What do you expect? And they've got that. And one client of mine said, I've got amazing artwork that I've got from this. And I'm going to, as soon as I finish this session, I'm to go and paint this.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
Or, the insights that I'm getting. And she said she would make a wheel and write down all the insights that she got in those 5 minutes.
So that's so interesting, because it's so you're visualizing, you're doing some future pacing work or future visualization, but you're also I practice something called Kundalini yoga, or the yoga of awareness, is also known as, and in a lot of the Kundalini careers that we do, we have to look, close our eyes, and we look at our third eye, and you're sort of stimulating the pituitary gland there as well, as what the yogis say. So that's really interesting, that actually putting your eyeballs to that sort of level, it's almost that similar action, isn't it, where you're
similar things. Yes.
Those yogis before us knew something that we didn't know, knew something a long time ago, right?
You're coming full circle.
Absolutely. But that's really interesting. So left is your future, right is
Yes.
the past. So you want to look.
Yes.
I'm going to try that later and see what I come up with. But that's really, really interesting. So you've got EMDR within your work. You've got the Silva method. Obviously, you use CBH as well in your toolkit for clients. What other techniques would you use with a client, or when you're seeing a client for the first time?
Not for the first time, but I also do past life regression therapy.
Right.
And it depends again on the client's personality. So only if the client asks for it.
Yeah.
So I do write it in my blurb that I do that. And if it has to come from the client, because it might be part of your belief system, it might not be. So I'm not going to impose my own values on someone. So if they ask for it, and if, let's say, some kind of, let's say, trauma or some kind of problem, and you can't get to the root of it in childhood. So when you have that kind of a situation, how past life regression therapy works is you take them further back, and the premise is that the root cause might be in one of your past lives. And if you go into one of those past lives and fix that and then come back, it has a positive effect on this life. So that's the premise behind past life regression therapy.
And when would you introduce that into the therapy mix? I guess it's it's not something that, like you said, not something that everyone would be maybe interested in. I think it's absolutely fascinating. So stuff that
absolutely fascinating, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting. Some of my clients might say, just for the heck of it, I want to know who I was in my past. But then I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't just go and do it just for the heck of it, for their curiosity. If I feel that I can heal them, if there's a genuine, if I genuinely feel that they can be healed, if I take them into a past life, or they feel that they can be healed, because at the end of the day, it's your subconscious mind, right? We're working at a deeper level. So if they feel that they can be healed, because otherwise, what if you open a Pandora's box and you create more traumas? So you have a little problem in this life, but in your past lives, obviously there must be some kind of tragedy, and that also becomes part of your memory. So you wouldn't want that. It's a very difficult call to make.
Maybe it's a stage of being ready for this, past life regression. It's deep work, isn't it? A lot of clients are just venturing in or dipping their toes into this area of therapy for the first time, and it might not be something that everyone's ready to have until maybe a few years down the line of doing some self-work or whatever it is. But it is a very fascinating area. Like you say, it's if we can heal, if we're energetic beings having spiritual beings, energetic beings having a human experience, and we are bringing layers into our life, into our energy field, and we're bringing those layers into every life. That there's something that we need to let go of.
So what you do is you'll take them through positive childhood memories. So taking them through a couple of positive childhood memories, back in the womb, and then through a corridor which has many doors. And what you tell them is, can you go to a lifetime? Can you open a door where you feel that the root of your problem is? So you reiterate the fact that this is healing that we are setting out to do. And it might take many doors. First, you have to take them very deep into hypnosis, obviously, because you have to take them to a very, very deep level to enable them to do that. So some clients in just half an hour can touch 7 lives in one session.
Wow.
as a therapist is just fascinating. The sights, the smell, the clothes, and so on. And I feel pretty responsible as well. I'm just wondering at the power of the mind.
Mm.
And then you bring them back to the room. You say that this is the time, this is the year, this is the room, this is the, and you just come back and very gently bring them back and soothe them. So it's fascinating work, honestly.
Yeah. But you've got to be an experienced, I think, person in this field, you know, someone like you yourself or other people who do past life regression hypnotherapy. I think, you know, if for any listeners out there, I would go for someone who is, you know, let's explore people who are experts in this field, because I guess it can be very traumatic as well if we're not doing it in the right way.
And that's why I don't take it lightly, and I don't
Mm.
offer it lightly either.
Yeah.
Because it is a big responsibility. But for people who are interested in it, there's a book called Many Lives, Many Masters by Dr. Brian Weiss. I think he was a Yale professor in the 60s who was a psychiatrist, and he was practicing in Miami, and he got a client who, through the many years that he treated her, she came up with 80 past lives. And initially he was very uncomfortable with it because he was just doing hypnotherapy with her, and she used to go into a past life. And he felt that he had lost credibility if he even discussed it with his peers. It would seem that it was just something that was, very new agey, and it was not serious. But then he's written a lot of books, and he does workshops, and now his daughter has taken up the mantle. He still gives workshops, but I think his daughter travels, so she comes and trains therapists and so on.
Wow.
So anyone who's interested might want to read his books.
And what was the name of the author again, sorry?
Dr. Brian Weiss, Weiss.
That's interesting when you say about the science, it seeming a bit woo-woo to some people, yeah. But it feels like this area, whether it's past life regression, past life healing, the Akashic records or the Akashic fields, yeah, as well. There's a lot more science, and we're understanding it a lot more. And I think it's a book that we've both read, is the Gary Zukav mentions as well. It's about not just being our five senses, and we are multisensory beings, right?
Multisensory beings.
Yeah.
There's our soul, and then there's our personality. That's how he puts it, right?
Yes. And as a as a therapist, as a hypnotherapist, what's your sense in terms of ourselves, our personalities versus our essence, the essence of who we are, the seat of our soul, as I think Zukav calls it?
Now that I think of it, it's a personal anecdote that if you want me to, I can relate very quickly. I remember when I was about 8 years old, I was an obese child or a fat child, and I was bullied a lot in school. So I was in the playground. I was about 8 years old, and those monkey bars where you can, those kind of playground. What do they? Monkey bars?
Climbing frame?
Exactly, climbing frames where you run around and catch each other. So there were lots of slim, thin girls going round and round and round. And I was just standing there and watching them, and they were my classmates, and they were pointing at me and they were laughing at me. And it's now that they were bullying me basically, and they were being, trying to humiliate me. And I remember, the playground, as if everything was in slow motion. I remember the sunshine. I remember sort of an out-of-body moment, but not quite. And I remember a voice in my head saying, "Poor things, they know not." Literally. And in jest, I always used to say, I wish I could go back to my 8-year-old self, who was so much more spiritual than what I am today. Because I would brood over it, and somebody, I have very thin skin, and somebody insults me, then I will brood about it. And I hope I'm getting better, but, I lost that as I grew up and the personality took over. Yeah. So I really understand now when I joined when that particular incident made sense to me, because I had always remembered it. But, I laughingly used to say that I was much more mature when I was 8 than what I am at this age. And now I know that was because it was a relatively new soul. An 8-year-old soul is a relatively new soul. So it's more aligned with the Creator than what we become later on. And I think our whole quest is to realign to our essential self, let's say.
Yeah,
Uh,
love that. Realigning to our essential self, to who we
and
truly
that's
are.
when we become empowered, don't we?
Absolutely. Our authentic selves.
Our authentic self. So that child was more authentic, I guess, than the adult me.
Yeah.
Because it took me a long time. I'm still not there, honestly. Somebody makes fun of me, I will still brood. At least it'll bother me. But just that thought. I mean, that's they know not. I mean, that's
They
quite
know.
formative.
That's so wise for an 8-year-old, right?
Yeah,
I love
exactly.
that. They know not, those that reminds me of
And
a
I actually felt sorry for them. Like, who does that?
yeah. And it is a famous quote. I want to say Jesus, they know not what they do. So
Yeah,
they're being awful to him and they're being, trying to break him and break him. And it's like, do you know what? They don't know what they're doing. It's almost
yeah,
like we are programmed. We go through life again. We talked about those important years from 0 to 7, and
yeah,
then the culture that we're in, the society, the news, family, school, everything kind of makes us conform.
true,
We
true.
conform, and then we're like, oh, we kind of got to go this way because that's where everyone is telling me I need to go.
True.
And I
We
certainly
heard it.
have that.
We heard it like sheep.
Yeah, we're herded like
Because
sheep, absolutely. And then, like you say, we suddenly start. There gets to maybe a stage in some of our lives where we start to peel back and go, like you. I remember going, I was so much wiser at, in my very early teens. I think what happened, but yeah, it's fascinating.
life happens, I
Our
guess.
personalities. I think it's the who does it? What the Buddhists call it, the golden Buddha inside. I love that whole. There was a recently in a temple, and they were taking out a plaster, a statue of a Buddha. It was a plaster statue, and someone dropped it or whatever happened. It chipped, and they're like, we've broken it. Oh my goodness, we've broken the Buddha. And what they found inside was a golden Buddha. Well, actually, for
Oh,
years they had kept this plaster cast version of it,
yeah.
but inside was the golden Buddha. So,
Oh,
and
wonderful.
I love that. Yeah, I kind of feel like we've all got our golden Buddhas inside us.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I think it's a really lovely way, isn't it? So I think, well, wow, we've been talking for quite a while now, and it's
Oh,
been such
really?
a so interesting, and I don't want to take up so much more of your time. But I guess if I could ask you a few last questions
Mhm. Cool.
around this. If, as a parent yourself and also as a therapist, what advice would you give parents during this time that we're going through?
No, my children are adults, so I don't have it as bad as people who are struggling with young children at home and they're not going to school, so they're juggling with their own work and their kids' homework and the kids getting irritable at home and they want to go out, etc. So the one thing is obviously address their behavior rather than their selves.
Mm.
So if you want to criticize them, if you want to discipline them in some way, address the behavior and keep the lines of communication open. And having said that, my kids will say, like, why didn't you take your own advice? And honestly, I've said it in another interview as well. I wish that they could train you to be a parent before you get married and have kids.
Mm.
Because for us, we got married young, and you just play it by the ear. You make mistakes, and by probably the third, fourth child, you get it right. By that time, you've messed up many kids. So I do apologize to my children, but now that you become wiser as you age, and that's why grandparents are so much more relaxed, aren't they?
Yes, yeah,
Because they've gone through this, they've seen what works, what didn't work. They're less stressed, so they enjoy children a lot more than parents do. So if if parents could get a grandparent's perspective
mm,
um, at the right time and enjoy their kids,
yeah,
that would be really nice, because I wish I had,
yeah,
honestly, because they were so cute and I didn't, because I was so stressed about this and that and homework and so on.
yeah.
And I missed that.
Yeah, and I guess it's so true when you say it's about, we've been in an interesting time where we've had to do lots of homeschooling, but actually it's, I guess, remembering the importance of being together and being with them and not being so stressed about the work.
You always remember that.
Mm,
They will remember that time more than what they did at school.
yeah,
Remember the time when we used to, when we were at home and dad was at home and mom was, for a lot of kids, they haven't seen their parents together at home in the mornings with them.
yeah,
And so that time, it's a golden time if you think about it,
yeah,
because they will catch up with the studies. Things will get back to normal. But this capsule of time hopefully won't come back again. But whatever we do have right now, we should enjoy it. And I think parents should also set an example. Like I'm seeing a lot of irresponsible behavior as far as parents are concerned, with not wearing masks, not keeping the distance, um, you know, not being responsible. Oh, we've been inside for 3 months in the summertime, and we will go out and we will do this and we will, you know, go on the beach, etc. And you see that the cases are spiking again. So if you need to set an example for your kids as well, you need to show some sense of responsibility, because you are their role model, and they will remember that
mm,
till they are old. So we need to lead by example, if that makes sense.
yeah, absolutely. And I think what you said about addressing the behavior as well being so
Yeah.
important. So, addressing the behavior rather than criticizing them and what they do.
Yes.
That's such an important point as well you make. And
Keeping the
yeah,
lines
leading
of
by
communication.
example.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm,
And trying to understand things from their level, from their perspective.
mm,
Because what they might be thinking is something that you might not even think about. Because children have a unique perspective. So you really need, especially when they're going to bed, you lie down with them. And that's when they're at their alpha levels, and then their deeper levels. They're just going to sleep. Then they will communicate with you better. Where you can, try to see things from their point of view, or when they will share their perspective or their stories or anything that's bothering them.
so just before bedtime.
Just before bedtime, if you can get into bed with them, and just after the stories, when they're nodding off,
Mm,
that's the time when they're at their deeper level.
and yes, that's when they're at alpha levels.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I'm going to start doing, maybe we do a family gratitude um,
Nice.
lists. Well, not really a list, but we do our own, sit around the table at dinner time. We talk about what are we most grateful for. It's a practice that I've done for years. I do it just before bedtime, and I do it before I go to sleep, which
Yeah.
again I think helps me embed in my subconscious all the things that I'm so grateful for.
That's a tradition you're carrying, right?
Yeah, that's my own personal tradition, and and I do it with clients as well. I try and encourage certain clients if they want me to write a gratitude list. But actually, when you're saying it with the children, actually before, maybe it's something that we should look at doing before bedtime as well, rather than just at the
Yes.
dinner table. And
Yeah.
because I think that sounds like it's when they're in the alpha brainwave state, something that maybe we will try. And
Yeah.
so what's next for you, Saira?
I just want to explore further. I'm doing a further course on trauma, From the States. I was enrolled in an NLP course, but that has been postponed. They said September, but I don't know. So I will include that as well. Although there is a little bit of NLP in hypnotherapy and in cognitive behavioral hypnotherapy per se, but that's also something very fascinating. So I want to include that in my repertoire. Specialize more in trauma as well. So that those are the short-term goals. I would like to have more online clients from other parts of the world now that we are not restricted geographically. So that's something that I need to do. And I would like to do more corporate workshops because I feel that I can, I've had a couple of good experiences, but I was just starting off when this happened. So I would like to pursue that as well.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Sounds like an exciting time ahead for you. Where can people find you, whether it's your website or Facebook?
My website, yeah. So it's Hypno for Ladies. 4 is a number 4.com. I'm also on Facebook under the name Hypno for Ladies, and I have a LinkedIn page, and I have an Instagram page.
And I'll add these all to the bottom of the podcast notes as well, so everyone can find you. So if anyone wants,
otherwise, you can just they can text me and set up a 20-minute chat, which is free, and they can discuss their issues, and we can take it forward from there. Whether they're a good fit for me, whether I'm a good fit for them, and move it forward that way. So I'm happy to chat with them on the phone at a set appointed time. So that's how they can reach out, either by texting or by emailing me through the website and so on.
Brilliant. And I'll include that. So if anyone wants to connect, Saira's details will be on here, and you can connect with her to have a 20-minute consultation appointment to have see if you're a good fit with each other, and see if that would, see if that you can move forward with that. One of the last things before we finish off is, what task or assignment, not homework, because I don't like the word homework, would you set me if I was a client?
The first thing that I would teach you, actually, that's what I do at the end of my assessment session, is I would teach you how to breathe. So portable breathing, I would teach you how to box breathe, and I would also teach you how to do progressive muscle relaxation from the top of your head to the tips of your toes. So whenever you're in a stressful situation, you have something portable to fall back on. And I will also install a safe place. I would ask you to identify a safe place in your head that you really feel. It could be a place from your childhood. It could be an imaginary place, somewhere where you can go mentally and just imagine that you're safe from all the stresses or any situation that you want to step back from. So 3 things that I do. I teach you how to breathe. I would install a safe place, and I would also ask you what your healing color is, so that you just stand under a shower of healing color, whatever that is for you. It could be golden or purple or whatever. You go to your safe place, or detach yourself from that situation, and you do a bit of box breathing or some kind of deep breathing that just calms your system. And that would be something that I would like to train you in, just from the get-go, so that relaxation is a portable thing for you. De-stressing is portable and doable for you.
I love that, because actually one thing I wanted to talk about and we didn't touch upon was this whole integration with mindfulness. And I think what you just brought in here was that, the box breathing, how we can focus on the breath.
Yes.
Be really present, and how that, the box breath, I think, is used by the Navy SEALs. It's used in really stressful environments, isn't it?
Firefighters, Navy SEALs, And everyone can use it. Students before exams, anyone who wants that, that pause before you let go in any situation. Let's say anger, you might say something that you might regret later. So just that step back, just to calm yourself, to calm your nerves. It works in so many situations. Coming out of a trauma, going into a stressful situation. you can do it discreetly on your palm, on your phone, on your lap, in the tube, and it just calms your whole system biologically.
Yeah, it's that
Because
calming the whole nervous system, doesn't it? It calms you, and it's just four breaths. Do you do 4 breaths in, hold for 4?
Yeah. So 4, inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, keep exhaling for 4, and you can increase that to 5, 6, etc. The thing is, the exhale needs to be double the inhale. So if you noticed here, the inhale was 4, but the exhale was 8. So 2 sides. Because the exhale really calms your vagus nerve that touches quite a few organs in your body. It just calms your system down. It's a daily hassles that get to a lot of people. It doesn't need to be a huge, life-changing trauma or something. It's just the day in, day out, the daily hassles, the traffic, the this, the that, and the other.
Yeah.
Raise your edges, basically, isn't
like you
it?
say, if you're stuck in traffic and you just want to go shout and you need to get somewhere, it's just take that.
So COVID is good for that, isn't it?
What's that?
I said COVID is good for that.
Yeah.
So we're not stuck in traffic anymore. We don't have those long commutes anymore.
Absolutely. So it's sort of enforced us to have that time, take that time to reflect, breathe, right? Just to breathe. That one, this beautiful thing that we have as human beings, to take that breath. Brilliant. So any other final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with us?
I had it in mind. It's just relax and let life unfold. Because me included, we worry too much about the future. And with the COVID thing, we've seen this black swan, what's called a black swan event happen that nobody could have foreseen before December. So we can't plan everything. We just have to trust in life and in creation and how it unfolds at the right time and not be too impatient. And again, I include myself in that, in that advice that we should just learn to let go at times. There's a time to plan, obviously, but there's a time to let go. Yeah. And just enjoy the ride.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, just let it unfold. We can't control everything we want to control, but there's certain things we can, it might take us on a different path, but we can get to where we want to go, but maybe not in the exact way we want it to go. I know I'm guilty of that sometimes. But and patience, I think that's a really beautiful one. We could all do with more, with being patient.
More patience, absolutely. And living in the now. Most people, that's where mindfulness comes in. The living in the now, which we can't manage, especially in these times with our devices and with our very short attention span. We are not savoring the now, which we need to do.
Absolutely. It's so important. I think what you've just ended on there, it's like living in the now, in the present.
Absolutely.
Seeing what comes up, for what unfolds for us. Thank you so much, Saira.
It was lovely talking to you.
It was so lovely to talk to you, and thank you for all your wisdom and your learnings and insights today. It has been a really interesting hour. So
thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Sending you lots of love and light.
Me too. Thank you very much. Thank you.